welcome to another episode of the CEO Peak. I am Dave Osh, the CEO of Varlinks that sponsors this show. We transform the invisible human drives that inhibit business performance in high complexity. Our purpose is to evolve leadership effectiveness so that together we create a ripple effect of unity in the world. The CEO Peak Show is devoted to sharing the thought leadership of successful leaders of mid-sized companies. Such a leader is our guest today, Ben Gaddis, the CEO of T3. T3 is an Austin, Texas innovation firm that helps brands create value for consumers first, then build messaging around that value. Focusing on innovation, Ben sets the vision for T3 to help clients build useful brands through a culture driven by collaboration, prototyping, and making cool stuff happen. He oversees all T3 offices in Austin, Atlanta, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Seattle. Ben has helped craft innovation, marketing, and loyalty strategies for 7-Eleven, Staples, UPS, Allstate, Coca-Cola, Sprite, and other clients. He launched T3's Innovation Labs to help clients take an agile approach to conceptualize and bring new tech, digital experiences, and products to market. He also created T3 Ventures that invests in and provides consulting and services to early-stage startups. Ben also serves as a Techstars mentor, Wired contributor, and a frequent speaker at events. Hello, Ben, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got me in the midst of reading your book, Irrationality, Embracing Irrationality, How Crazy Thinking Saved Your Career, Your Company, and Possibly Your Job. And, literally it was breathtaking to read the first chapter about your free dive. And one of the things that resonated with me is like the 65-foot barrier, the wall that the brain is lying to you. So can you tell us a little bit more about this experience, about this wall that free divers, which I'm not familiar at all with?
Absolutely. So one of my passions thing I really, really enjoy doing is free diving. And I grew up going to the Bahamas. And what free diving is just going down as far as you can go on one breath of air, no scuba tanks or anything like that. And I went and I took this class one time, and what I learned is that at 66 feet, there is a actual physical response because the pressure at 66 feet is so great that when you hit 66 feet, the stretch receptors in your chest, actually the pressure makes the body think that you run out of air. And so there's this phenomenon called the lying bastard. That's what they call it. And at 66 feet, freedivers will have plenty of air. They'll go down, they're fine at 60 feet, at 65 feet, and right at 66 feet, it feels like you're just hitting the chest with a sledgehammer. And most people turn around and they go back up because what's happening is your brain is actually telling you that you don't have air when in fact you do. And it's this thing that everyone has to overcome in the freediving world to go deep. And what's really interesting is I experienced that. And in the book, what I talk about is that's actually a physical response that I see happen with our clients outside of the freediving world in the business environment all of the time when we try to get them to do more innovative things. They have this response where their body is telling them that maybe they shouldn't do something that's new, that's a little bit challenging. And so in the book, we talk a little bit about the correlations between freediving, the lying bastard, and innovation in the business community.
It reminds me a lot about the pilot aviator vertigo. Well, I was a fighter pilot for 17 years, and one of the things that it's called spatial disorientation. And so many pilots are killed because of the brain tricks us. The brain, exactly what you said, the brain at 66 feet lies to us. It lies the pilots, and you don't believe the instruments, you believe your brain, and you crash. You think that you're going up and actually you're diving into the ground. It's unbelievable how the brain can really trick us. So Can you elaborate? How do you see how the brain actually holds back innovation in organizations?
Well, so the book is called Embracing Irrationality, and what we found is that irrationality is this word that people have a real negative connotation around. You think about irrational people; it's not really people you want to be around. But irrationality is also very closely linked with new ideas. So think about when everyone thought the world was flat, to say it was round, that was kind of irrational. Or in today's world, we talk a lot about vaccines. The idea of putting germs into or a virus into someone's bloodstream to actually give them immunity, that was kind of irrational. And so what we see is that these ideas that are really kind of crazy are actually some of the ideas that change the world. The problem is that your brain is wired to not make you think irrationally, and instead to always think rationally, because you don't want to be ostracized, you don't want to be fired, and there's this fear factor. But the challenge becomes, how do you understand what's truly fear and what's just your brain tricking you? To your point of flying with instruments, you have to get to a point when you're either professional enough or you just trust your experience enough that you're going to say, you know what, I think I'm going down, but I'm actually going up, and I'm going to rely on those instruments. And so what we found is in corporate America, when people have to make a big decision that might go against their quarterly numbers, it might go against immediate revenue. What they start to do is they start to think about, well, what if I make this decision that I know is right long term, but might not look good tomorrow? And how do I weigh those two? And most often, people pick the short gains as opposed to the longer term. And so what we found is you've really got to lean into that, and you've almost got to trick your brain into allowing you to do some of these irrational things that lead to big innovation.
Yeah. Irrationality has some kind of negative connotation, comes with that. But when we think about what you're saying, actually, the more innovative you are, the more irrational you are, because most of the extreme innovation, people look at it and say, this is kind of a crazy idea when it starts, right? It's not widely accepted. So
it is. If you look at all the ideas that are really changing the way that we live our lives right now, they're kind of crazy. I mean, take Airbnb, for example. If you walked into the Hilton Corporation 12 years ago and you said, hey, Dave, you know what? I've got this really great idea for how we become the biggest hotel company in the world. My friend's got a couch and we're going to rent out his couch. And then we'll just do that over and over and we'll build a platform. You would have been laughed out of the building, absolutely laughed out of the building. And there were people who had similar ideas who just, they were very, very at odds with the way that those big hotel chains made money. And so those ideas seem irrational. They don't seem possible. They seem crazy. They seem too far out there, but they just don't seem like they're going to happen. And then when someone actually makes them happen, they remove the constants in the industry, then all of a sudden, in post haste, they don't look so crazy. And what's interesting about most irrational ideas is they're only irrational until they're not. And then at that point, you can look back and say, well, why didn't I invent that? Why didn't I do that? And it just kind of makes sense. It's that leap of faith. It's that moment at the inception of an idea that is really the most challenging.
Yeah. And Ben, what I really love the most about your book, that you are not just providing a process for innovation, because there's so many books about how to do ABC to become innovative, but you are looking at the underlying causes that actually holds back innovation. You mentioned the fear factor. Can you elaborate? What do you mean by a fear factor? You mentioned actually the risk of the next quarter, but when it comes to the individual, how fear can hold back innovation?
Well, so I always talk about just the way that society and structures have been put around us to remove risk. So if you think about when you were a caveman, when we were all cavemen thousands of years ago, if you did something irrational, you might die, right? If you ate all your food, if you went outside without a torch, you could be eaten by a tiger. Something bad could happen to you. For the most part, today, you're not really at the risk of dying when you do something that is irrational. We have our common food and shelter for a lot of us covered. And so what has happened now, though, is that our body reacts to big and significant change in a way that is similar to this fight or flight mentality, even when you're not facing that. So, for example, if you're trying to push through a new product or a new idea or innovation, you start to weigh the risk and you look at, well, what could happen? Well, I could be fired. Maybe I don't get a promotion if this doesn't work out. Maybe we don't hit our numbers. And so what people start to do is they look at that uncertainty. They look at what they have to actually do to achieve this idea. It seems a bit irrational. And they go, you know what? That looks dangerous. That actually doesn't look like something that is in my best interest because it's hard and my gut tells me I shouldn't do it. And that goes back to that idea of the lying bastard or the flying by instruments. That gut reaction has a physical effect on people where they just shy away from it. And sometimes you can even see them. I mean, literally, they'll move back from the table because something comes over them. And so the challenge is you've got to figure out how do you overcome that. And it's not as easy as just saying push through it or work a little bit harder. What we found is there's a process that you can actually go through step by step to break down big irrational ideas and almost trick your brain by taking a very rational approach to making them happen.
I see. So actually what you tell your brains that, or you teaches your brain that actually the brain lies and the risk is not as high as it perceives it. So instead of the amygdala actually kicks in to respond, the prefrontal cortex actually joins the conversation, and then it reduces the fear factor because it sees the risk differently. Did I get it right?
It does, right? So you're bringing in other data points, and you're also looking at, you're tricking the brain, but you're also breaking down the problem and the issue to understand what is it truly. Things are so much scarier when they're bigger. And what we talk about is this, you have to have an irrational vision, but the people who have the biggest irrational visions, they don't jump from point A to point B. They make decisions every single day that allow them to get to their irrational vision that are really small. And we call those 1-degree decisions. And so the best way to get to an irrational outcome isn't to go out and to announce to everybody, hey, we're not going to build any more hotels. We're only going to be sleeping, have customers sleeping on people's couches. That's not the way to do it. It's to test. Can we get one person to pay us to sleep on someone's couch? Can we get 5 couches? Can we rent the whole house? But what the problem is that those are easy things to accomplish, but not if they're competitive to your existing business. So what we do with these 1-degree decisions is we try to make sure that people look at every single decision they make every single day and make sure that even if it doesn't get you to your irrational vision, it doesn't prevent you from getting there. And a lot of the models that exist today that are unsuccessful are really rooted in the fact that it wasn't that people didn't want to get to the irrational vision. It's that they made a short-term decision today that prevented them from getting there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So can you encapsulate the innovation process like in a 2-3 minutes? We understand the process, big picture.
So it's 3 steps, and it's simple, but there's a lot in it. The first is we try to train people to be irrational visionaries. And people think of like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos as irrational visionaries, but there's irrational visionaries in every single company. And what we have to do is you have to unlock them. You have to find them and you have to keep them inside your organization to be successful. What an irrational visionary does is they look at their business through a lens searching for constants. Let me keep on the hotel example for just some consistency here. A constant is a pillar or a belief in an industry that someone believes will never change. So for hotels, it's that people stay in hotels. It's that we need to build hotels, and more hotel rooms means more profit as long as we can fill them up. That's a great business until it's not, until everyone stops traveling and people don't want to stay in hotels because there's hundreds of other people there, right? So that's a constant. Building hotels is how we grow. what Airbnb did is they said, well, why don't we just take lots of excess inventory, like people's couches or houses or vacation homes, and make those available in a very different platform and a much easier way to consume. So constants are things that we have to identify that you believe are the core of your business, but that might not actually be the case. In banking, one of the constants is you have to deposit your money in a bank. That's really what a bank does, if you think about it, right? Like, why does a bank exist? If a bank has no deposits, they have no other capabilities or anything to deliver value. It's all based on deposits. Why do you deposit money? Because it's a 1,000-year-old concept that you didn't want to carry around a bag of gold because you'd get hit over the head and somebody would steal all of your wealth if you actually did that. I mean, when was the last time you actually saw more than 10% of your net worth? Like, you don't actually see that, yet we still deposit our money in the banks in this antiquated form. That's a constant. So irrational visionaries identify a constant, but the second step is really important. It's not enough to just say, you know what, maybe at some point we're not going to build hotels, or maybe we don't have to deposit our money in banks. What happens if that was to go away? What's the irrational vision? What does the world look like if those constants were removed? In Airbnb's case, it's, well, what if we never built another hotel room? How would we actually scale our business? We just add more homes to the platform. Okay, that's an irrational vision. That's great. The third step, though, is what do we need to do today to test that out? And how do we make sure that every decision we make enables us to stay on that track to prove out that irrational vision? So maybe what we'll do is we'll pick a market and we'll run a couple of tests. Maybe we will partner with an existing company. Maybe we'll buy a company. And so it's really about a test and learn model. So you identify the constants, you develop an irrational vision, and then most importantly, you make 1-degree decisions every day to keep you on the path to that irrational vision.
Wow, beautiful. Such a simple 3-step process to innovation that deals with primarily looking for the constants or constraints that you have. So that's a great model. How do you take it to the whole organization? You mentioned just unlock those innovative, irrational thinkers in an organization. How do you create a ripple effect across the organization?
Well, so the problem with being irrational is that if you do it the wrong way, people don't tend to like you. If you do it the right way, it's infectious in a good way. People want to be around you. So going out and saying, I'm irrational, I'm smarter than you, I have better ideas doesn't really work well. But offering up ideas, collaborating with people, and enabling them to think differently is something that everybody wants on their team. They want in their leaders, they want in their organization. And so what we say is this idea of Jefferson had a kitchen cabinet. So it's sort of an informal addition to his formal cabinet structure. And so what we say is you have to find typically 4 to 6 other people in the organization who sort of share a desire for innovation, who think like you. If you're the CEO, it's a lot easier. If you're a mid-level manager, implementing a rational vision is a little bit more challenging. So we look for like-minded people, and then we try to find safe spaces where you can talk about the constants that you think your business is rooted in that might go away, that might be a false constant. And that's really the first thing that you do. And if you found those people, and maybe it's the way that they talk, maybe it's the way they, a little spark goes off when you drop something about a constant, and you find those people, if you can say, hey, this is a safe space where we really want to talk about what could happen. It's amazing to just see them kind of like light up and kind of come out of their shell a little bit. So we really start with that, and that starts to get momentum inside the organization. And then we really start to try to push that up through the organization. And that's where we've been most successful.
So you identify people and they create kind of a critical mass to create a movement within the organization.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. So Ben, thank you so much. I think people that want to learn more, just see and read the book. You even didn't know that I'm going to share the book and promote it, because usually I never endorse any products or services, but in this case, I will do that. For the next month, actually, Ben invites you to pay what you like on his website to download and Embracing Irrationality. Is it still on, Ben?
It is. It is. So we're going to donate the profits. So we're in Texas, and so everybody got hit pretty hard. And so we're going to donate all the profits from the book to the relief funds to help out people who just went through the cold snap in Texas.
Yes. So you can go to bengaddis.com. I will share the link below, and you can get the book, and it's actually a donation. So, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today.
Thank you, Dave.
And thank you for watching the show, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.